The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NBA.
The Cleveland Cavaliers are 15-0.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
The Cleveland Cavaliers beat the Charlotte Hornets 128-114 Sunday night at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Cavs are now 15-0, an incredibly impressive start. I thought that there were certainly impressive moments in this game. Donovan Mitchell did not play. First game of the year that Mitchell has missed for the Cavs. He was out for resting purposes. Kenny Atkinson was asked about this prior to the game, and he made it sound as if this was something that had been planned for a while. With the way the schedule has shaken out, as the Cavs being a team that has not had back-to-back days off yet. They've played a lot of games in not a ton of games. I believe this was 15 games in 26 days, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't done the math on that lately, and I forgot what it was before. I think it was 14 and 24, so I think this makes 15 and 26. But that was the plan, and the Cavs had guys step up. Ty Jerome was awesome, and I thought that was one of the biggest stories from the game on Sunday night. Ty slid into the starting five in replace of Donovan Mitchell, and Kenny said part of it was rewarding Ty for the way that he's played so far this season, where he's been really a key to the Cavs' success off the bench. It feels like almost every night, or at least every other night, Ty is somebody that is making a play that helps the Cavs win basketball games. So this was a little bit of a reward for him, but it was also a way to take the pressure off Darius Garland by having another guy in the starting lineup that's a ball handler that they trust to operate the offense, and that's part of the schematic reasons for it. And Ty rewarded the Cavs with a really good performance on Sunday night. He had 24 points, he had 8 assists. This was the best game statistically that Ty Jerome has had in his NBA career. He tied his career high in points, he tied his career high in assists. Those two things did not come in the same game before. This was the best game Ty Jerome has ever played. Now, of course, he wasn't the only member of the Cavs to have a really good game on Sunday night. I thought Evan Mobley was awesome in this win over Charlotte. And Charlotte is not a team right now that is overly big. They don't have a ton of size. And I thought the Cavs took advantage of that certainly early. Mobley, I think, had 10 points in the first quarter. He made a three-pointer. He made 2 threes on the night. Believe he was 9 of 12 from the floor. This was a really good game from him. He did have 4 turnovers, which is something that the Cavs as a whole need to cut down on. I believe they had 20 turnovers for the game, which led to Charlotte taking almost 30 more field goal attempts than the Cavs did. So that is something to watch out for. But Mobley plays with an aggressiveness offensively, and I think a ferocity too that we haven't seen before. If you watch Evan Mobley, the number of times that he's finishing through contact is so much different than anything we had seen from Evan Mobley in the first few years of his career. He's obviously been good, but the way that he's finished through contact at the rim, the way that he's putting his shoulder into guys' chests, like Evan got called for an offensive foul, and I think part of it was Grant Williams embellished a little bit, but he put his shoulder into Grant's chest and Grant fell down. And I don't think that's the type of thing that you can be mad at. I wouldn't so much rather have Evan get called for that and have that type of aggressive foul, but it's because he's being physical, because he knows he can out-muscle guys in a way that I don't think he was capable of doing before. So seeing that, I actually think is an encouraging sign. But around the rim, he finishes through so much more contact. When he dunks the basketball, his dunks come with a ferocity that I don't think he had before. Not all of them, but I think that they're just like meaner dunks, right? And that I think it speaks to him being so much more aggressive as a basketball player. And I think that has been a big reason why this Cavs team has taken off the way they have taken off offensively. And part of the thing I was curious to see on Sunday night was what was Evan going to look like coming off of a game where in Philadelphia last Wednesday, very clearly didn't look right. He was questionable with an illness. He played through it, but I didn't think he looked like Evan Mobley. Then on Friday against Chicago, didn't play because of the illness. was on the injury report with it tonight, was probable, and Kenny was willing to give away before the game when somebody asked him, was not me, when somebody asked him whether or not Evan was going to be able to play, he was fine giving that away. So that is something that, okay, we're going to see what he looks like. And he came out, he was awesome. He was awesome early, even though, and I do think part of it was too, most of the time, Evan has seen minutes with Donovan Mitchell this year, where last year, Evan, I thought, played much more with Darius Garland. Those two were kind of paired. This year, he's been paired with Donovan Mitchell more. So there were times when Evan could really be the focal point offensively. And I thought he took advantage of those moments pretty well on Sunday night. I'd like to see him have more than 12 shot attempts. I think a lot of that is the Cavs just turn the ball over a little bit too frequently on Sunday. But I think his aggressiveness level is kind of where it needs to be. And I think that coming off of this illness, seeing him bounce back immediately with a really strong performance is definitely an encouraging thing to see. He was one of 3 guys in the Cavs starting lineup to have a double-double. They had 4 guys score 20 or more points. Evan, Ty, Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen all did. And then he, Garland, and Allen all had double-doubles. Darius, I thought, was really good again on Sunday night. Darius is putting together a really, really impressive campaign so far. We're 15 games in. So it's too early to make all-star declarations. It's too early to say, oh, this guy's going to be all NBA or this guy's going to be in the running for this award. But if Darius Garland continues to play that he has had so far this season, he, 1, is going to be an all-star, and 2, he's going to be somebody that's not just an all-star, but is talked about as a potential all NBA candidate. And I have held that stock for a very long time. I remember once upon a time, long before I was hosting this podcast, I was a guest on this podcast. And I was a guest on this podcast. We talked about Darius Garland. I was on with Chris. And one of the things, I thought this was before they traded for Donovan Mitchell. I thought Darius Garland had all NBA potential. And then when they traded for Mitchell, I thought that went away just because he wouldn't have the opportunity. But what we're seeing from Darius is so impressive in so many facets, where he is taking care of the basketball, I think, at a much better level than he was last year. He's making the right play over and over and over again. He's shooting the heck out of the basketball. He's finishing at the rim so much better than he did last year. I don't know, and I've not watched every game of every team all season long, so forgive me. But I don't know of another player in the NBA who's like an established veteran that is more improved from what they were last year. I'm not saying Darius is going to win Most Improved Award. I think this would be more of a comeback player of the year type situation. But think about what Darius was last year as a basketball player. And then think about what Darius has been this year as a basketball player. I don't know that there is a bigger difference from a veteran player in the entire NBA than what we're seeing in Darius Garland. Because he was somebody that, because of a multitude of things, was not very good last season. And now he is somebody that looks like an all-star starter. He's somebody that looks like an all-NBA candidate. He's somebody that looks like a true star player again. That is one of the biggest boosts that the Cavs could possibly have had. And I think that was on display again on Sunday night, where it doesn't matter who he's defending. It doesn't matter who's defending him. He's going to get his way every time. He's going to get to the basket. He's had, I think, a tremendous season finishing around the rim. He's shooting lights out from beyond the arc. He's doing everything, and he's doing it all at a high level. I will say the one concern with him right now, I do think his back is a little bit of an issue. There were times during the game on Sunday where it looked like he was laboring a little bit, getting up and down the court. Like, you could almost tell his back was tightening up. He did go back to the locker room at some point, or at least in the tunnel at some point, and he finished the game. He was asked about it after the game, and Kenny Atkinson acknowledged, you know what, he is dealing with a little bit of something. It's kind of a wear and tear thing. So certainly have to hope that that is not that big of a deal. But that's a lot of stuff that I thought was really, really good from Garland, from Mobley, Ty Jerome, just the Cavs as a whole on Sunday as they move to 15-0.
Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
James Harden passes Ray Allen in all-time threes.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast.
So let's talk about it, ladies and gentlemen. Clipper Nation, we back at home. I was at the game on Sunday night, as expected, with the Utah Jazz not being a very good team this season. Attendance wasn't too great. It was a very subdued game in terms of atmosphere. I think everyone's just kind of getting ready for Monday night against the Warriors because they're coming in playing good ball. And, of course, we know the kind of crowd that Curry and crew generate. But first things first, take care of business on the first half of the back-to-back against the Jazz, and we did that. And I think this game will be most remembered for being the game, not I think, it will be in the historical scheme of things, the game that James Harden became the second highest three-point maker, I guess you can call it, in the history of basketball. The second highest three-point field goals made in NBA history. The man that has done that is James Harden, not Ray Allen anymore, which is insane. And I remember watching Ray Allen pass Reggie Miller for first place all time against the Lakers in 2011. It was a TNT game, and I was watching it in my living room. And now having seen Steph Curry pass Ray Allen and MSG, and now James Harden passed Ray Allen, I mean, that's an accomplishment, to say the least. Second most threes in NBA history, James Harden. And think of how tough some of those threes have been. Yes, he plays in an era that they emphasize volume threes, not like Ray Allen. I still think Ray Allen is a better shooter than James, but James, especially off the dribble, is one of the best three-point shooters in NBA history. And now, I mean, after being second all-time, without a doubt, one of the best three-point shooters in NBA history. And in this game, he may have been the player of the game. He led the way very well. And the Utah Jazz, they were switching everything. So that causes us to play more one-on-one ball. But I thought we did a very good job in this game of taking advantage of favorable one-on-one matchups and getting downhill. And who does that begin with? James Harden. He had Lauri Markkanen on a switch twice in the first half. Got by him both times. 2 feet in the paint. I didn't see too much over dribbling from Harden nor KPJ. I thought they were a lot more intentional. I'll talk about KPJ more later, but Harden, very solid. And the best part about his stat line, which was 20 points, 6 rebounds, 11 assists, 2 steals and 2 blocks. I think his best defensive game in a couple of games. And no turnovers. He and Chris Dunn had no turnovers. And neither did Nico Batum, and neither did Amir Coffey and Terrence Mann. We were very low turnover on Sunday night. Just 9 as a team. Whereas the Jazz got 19. And that's where we really started, the party was defensively. But offensively, James Harden was creating shots all game long when he was in. And it's when he's playing like that, I mean, it's great to see for the Clippers. And by the way, just being a part of history as a Clipper fan is special. I obviously wasn't the biggest James Harden fan before he came to the Clippers. But he is one of the greatest players of all time. And for him to have a moment like that as a member of the Clippers, that is something for our franchise to acknowledge because, as a Clipper fan, we haven't been used to hosting and having our players have historic moments like that. Of course, James Harden is not a Clipper legend. He's been here for a little over a year. But the thing is, it doesn't even matter because we just are not used to seeing that kind of stuff. Players like James Harden even play for the Clippers, so especially when they're still a very effective player. He also shot well from the field again. 7 for 14. Did not shoot very well from 3. 2 for 8, but was 4 for 5 from the line in 34 minutes. I mean, this game, look, the Clippers were ahead wire to wire. We started out by kicking them in the mouth, but then they bounced back a bit in that first quarter, and then we slowly built up that lead. Second quarter was complete domination on our part. We outscored them 31-20, and after outscoring them 35-25 after one, we went up by 23 points, and they kind of chipped away at it because we got a little stagnant offensively. It seemed like we got a little fatigued, and I think also just took our foot off the gas. And they have a young athletic team, so they got back in it to a degree, cut it down to 8. But I was never too worried. It was just like, why can't we just cruise to a blowout win? But we'll take the win at 116-105. We're now 7-7 on the season. Utah is 3-10. We shot 49% from the field. And here's the thing. We shot 27.5% from 3. So we didn't even shoot well from 3. They, on the other hand, shot better than us from the field. 49.4%. So literally 0.5 percentage points. Shot 30% from 3. But the main difference is we got 15 more shots off because of the turnovers. I thought we got solid contributions from all across the board. But I think James Harden and Ivica Zubac are my leaders for player of the game. But moral of the story, James Harden passed Ray Allen in threes. Great night to get back on track. We are a much better team than Utah. And I mean, Lauri Markkanen, some of the stuff he was doing was like, compared to the Lauri Markkanen I've seen the last 2 years, so strange. Like, just, Chris Dunn was guarding him to start the game. We were putting Chris Dunn on him. And he wasn't even being aggressive. It was so weird. And then defensively getting blown by a little easier than I've seen the last couple of years. I mean, is Lauri Markkanen in on the plan to just go for Cooper Flag? Because, I mean, that was weird. At one point, I was like, Markkanen's point shaving. But anyway, Clippers win it. James Harden, congratulations to him, passing the great Ray Allen in threes all time. Insane accomplishment. 116-105. Clippers win it at the Intuit Dome.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. You could bet on Monday Night Football. The Houston Texans travel across the state to face the beleaguered Dallas Cowboys. 7-point favorites at Jerry World. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast.
It was a weekend that started slow. The Memphis Grizzlies lose a tough one out there at Golden State, so they lose both of their games on national television. Maybe we can just start a petition for the Memphis Grizzlies to never play on ESPN or in California ever again. I would support both of those endeavors. But Memphis came back home on Sunday evening, an earlier tip against the Denver Nuggets. It's the rare home and home against the same team. The NBA has started doing these more, coming out of COVID, trying to ease some scheduling concerns. So the Nuggets will play both of their games in Memphis this season, this week. Yesterday they played, of course. Memphis won that contest 105-90, and they'll play again on Tuesday in NBA Cup action. So the court will look different, the uniforms will look different, but the teams will be the same. And maybe the rosters will look a little bit different. Marcus Smart was out for this one for Memphis due to illness. Nikola Jokic, for personal reasons, did not play for the Nuggets. And the Nuggets are a team at this stage that if Nikola Jokic doesn't play, they're in trouble. Jamal Murray is not the kind of guy that is able to carry that weight by himself. And as amazing as Jokic is, and in my opinion, he is the undisputed best basketball player on the planet. Without him, and with so much of their offense being built around this one guy as a point center doing things that very few, if any, players in the National Basketball Association can do, it lends itself to not being able to replicate it in the aggregate. And that's what you saw against Denver, only 90 points scored by that team. You want to give credit to the Memphis Grizzlies, who have one of the top defenses in the NBA yet again. And we'll talk about giving Taylor Jenkins his flowers as much as he frustrates me recently. He ties Lionel Hollins for the franchise record in wins. So that means Taylor Jenkins will become the winningest coach in Memphis Grizzlies history at some point, perhaps as soon as tomorrow night. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. This particular game, while it was won defensively, it's not like Memphis shot the lights out themselves. They were 33% from beyond the arc, 45% from the field. Denver was that much worse, right? Denver shot worse than Memphis in every category. They were able to limit their two best offensive players, Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, in this game, 10 of 25 from the field, or 10 of 27, from the field. That's not going to get it done for the Nuggets if they are without the likes of Nikola Jokic and, of course, Aaron Gordon also out due to injury. You can't count on Russell Westbrook to be an efficient scorer. You can't count on seeing a ton of scoring from Julian Strawther. Although he scored 19 on 13 shots, how consistently are you going to get that from that type of bench player for Denver? What you can expect to get is defense from the Memphis Grizzlies, and they brought that and then some in this particular contest. Really cool to watch them flow, watch them find their rhythm on that end. Who knows if it can stick? Who knows if it'll stick around? But again, the deflections, the blocks, 20 stocks on the evening for Memphis, 10 steals, 10 blocks, only 14 combined stocks for Denver. That was a major advantage for the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies defended without fouling for the most part. Only one player had 3 fouls. That's Scottie Pippen Jr. We'll talk more about him later on in the show. But it was a good performance defensively. It was the Memphis Grizzlies doing to a team that is wounded what they should, even in their current state. Because we have to remember, Ja Morant still out. We'll talk about him in terms of an injury update later on in the show. Not necessarily much of an update to discuss, but there was an update on Ja, and Ja did not play in this contest. So the Nuggets were without Jokic. The Grizzlies were without Morant. But the second and third best player for the Grizzlies, Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr., did suit up, and they looked good. Didn't necessarily shoot the ball particularly well, and Desmond Bane, to his credit, talked about knocking down some more buckets in his post-game interview after the victory. But he talked about defense. He talked about how it was part of the game plan to make sure that they limited Michael Porter Jr., that they tried to take Jamal Murray, out of his game, and they did just that, and they deserve credit for that. The Grizzlies deserve credit for the fact that 11 guys, even with Marcus Smart and Ja Morant out, and Gigi Jackson is still out, right? Numerous guys still not playing. 11 Memphis Grizzlies logged at least 12 minutes of playing time. 11, even with 2 key Grizzlies players not being on the floor. That is a remarkable flexing of depth that Taylor Jenkins and company put on Sunday evening. And there's no denying that it is helpful, right? And there's no denying that it is a positive and that the team is really doing a good job finding their footing in terms of the defensive side of the court, right? It just seemed like the energy was different. They were more comfortable. They were flying around. They were diving to the floor, trying to get those 50-50 balls that are so important. They were really looking for opportunities to make big-time defensive plays. Jaren Jackson Jr. looked more himself defensively, at least when it comes to blocking shots. 3 blocks for this game. You know, I had talked about recently how Jaren had more steals than blocks per game on the season. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a redistribution of his defensive impact. Jaren Jackson Jr. looked impactful in the way that we were used to seeing him be impactful, while also leading the team in scoring at 20 points. That's all good. Bane and Jackson Jr. played well. Desmond Bane with a double-double, leading the team in rebounds in addition to scoring 11 points, dishing out 7 assists. They helped win this game for Memphis in non-traditional ways. It wasn't just about scoring the basketball. They had a big second and third quarter. That's where they really grew their advantage. They won the second quarter by 9 points, and then they won the third quarter by 8 points. They're up by 3 at the end of the first. So going into the fourth quarter, Memphis had an 20-point advantage. And then the Nuggets cut it to 15 there to close out the contest. But the Grizzlies got contributions from everyone. Brandon Clark rebounded well. You saw some really good flashes from the likes of Zach Edey, who did roll his ankle in the game, had to leave due to that injury. Hopefully we'll get an update on that and be able to provide it going into our Tuesday edition of the show when DeMichael is back with us. But Edey coming off the bench, and again, we'll talk more about that here in a second, 7.7 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks in just 14 minutes of play. So they are showing that their depth is impressive. They are giving guys opportunity to log a lot of minutes. Luke Kennard led the Grizzlies off the bench in this one, 26 minutes, 8 points, 4 assists. He continues to really show off and flex that distribution muscle that I have known he's had going back to his time in Detroit, but maybe he hasn't had a chance until he came to Memphis to really show that he is a good secondary and tertiary, creator of offense. So again, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane helping lead the charge, doing it in a non-traditional way in Memphis, playing this group of guys 11 deep in terms of a rotation, also non-traditional in and of itself. An injury update on Ja Morant. Not much of an update, unfortunately. DeMichael Cole, my co-host here on Locked On Grizzlies, he's also the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. More imaging to come on Ja Morant literally today on his injured hip. Taylor Jenkins says Ja is still week to week as of right now. But with the way that this team handles injuries, with the way that this team handles these issues, you would have to imagine that we won't see Ja Morant for some time. I would say maybe not till December. That's a couple weeks from now, obviously. I think it's going to be a little bit before Ja returns. And obviously that's no good for the Grizzlies overall, right? They need their best player on the floor to reach their full potential. He's an important piece of what they're trying to do. But I also think that it places a strain on a guy like Scottie Pippen Jr. And this is where coaching, again, needs to come to the forefront and acknowledge that you cannot expect somebody that is a backup to truly replicate, what your starter brings. And I think this is a good example of giving credit where it's due to the Denver Nuggets, who didn't have Nikola Jokic on Sunday night, and they decided to go small, right? They go small. They're not even going to try to pretend to be what they are with Jokic on the court. They go in a different direction. And yeah, Denver lost, but I think when you're so dependent on such a tremendous player like Jokic, and you also still don't have Aaron Gordon as well, that's to be expected. Them beating Memphis would have been a disaster. And if Jokic is out again tomorrow for the NBA Cup game, which is possible, then that would be a disaster for Memphis in that occasion because they are so dependent on what Jokic brings to the table. He is that impactful. He's that good. Scottie Pippen Jr. is not Ja Morant. And Scottie Pippen Jr. is a guy that was on a two-way contract several months ago. I am not quite sure why the Grizzlies continue to expect Scottie Pippen Jr. to be something that he's not. He's not Tyus Jones. He's not somebody that should come in and be a consistent starter on this team. You have players like Vince Williams Jr. that are physically better, that have shown the capacity to be secondary and tertiary facilitators of offense. And you have Desmond Bane. They can split those roles. You talk about running an offensive scheme, which, by the way, looked really good against the Denver Nuggets. The Grizzlies made 41 shots and 31 of them were assisted on. That's impressive. The ball was moving well. The Grizzlies were passing up good shots for great shots, finding shooters in the corner, dribble penetration, and then making hockey assists off of that, skip passes. Guys were moving off the ball. That change is a positive one for Memphis at this stage. But you don't need Scottie Pippen Jr. to be out there on the floor in that place. It can be a Vince Williams Jr. And if you are saying that Vince Williams Jr. is being eased into the season because he missed so much time, fine. Luke Kennard is right there. And guess what Luke Kennard did? 4 assists, 1 turnover. He understands how to create within this offensive scheme. Maybe you're saying that he's not the defender that Scottie Pippen Jr. is. Okay. I think I can understand that argument. But you were struggling offensively to start the contest. It was 11-5 when Edey and Aldama came in. And let's assume that Edey is out for a little while with that ankle injury. We'll get more concrete information tomorrow. Are you going to try to just replicate Zach Edey in the aggregate? You have extra 7'4", 290-pound guys laying around? Of course not. You give Jay Huff more run. You give him another opportunity after a couple of rough games. He played pretty well against Denver. Give him some minutes. Is Jay Huff better than Zach Edey? No. Can you do things a little bit differently around Jay Huff than you can with Zach Edey? Yes. And that's what Memphis should be prioritizing. Ja Morant being out hurts. The ceiling of this team is lower when Ja Morant is out. There's no denying that. Memphis is 8-6. That is an improvement over last year, like we talked about before. But the Grizzlies have some challenging games on the long-term horizon. The Nuggets, if they're without Jokic, not that challenging. The 76ers, fairly broken at this stage. Who knows when Joel Embiid plays or doesn't play. The Chicago Bulls, after a few days off, that's a one-game trip on the road. Then you have the Trailblazers, who are not particularly good. You have the Pistons, who are better this year, but that's a game at home that Memphis should compete, and that's the day before Thanksgiving, I believe. Then you have the day after Thanksgiving against the Pelicans, the only team in the league that has similar injury issues to you, if not worse than Memphis. And then you host the Pacers a couple of days later. So of Memphis's 7 games coming up over their next 7 games, 6 of them are at home. 6 of them are at home. This is a window where even without Ja Morant, they have to rack up some wins. They have to pick up some victories. And you hope that Ja can return. But if you're the Memphis Grizzlies and you're looking at this roster, you're 5-2 at home. I'll talk with Michael more about that tomorrow too. That was another issue last season. The team was not performing well at home, and that spanned the entire campaign, not just the 25-game suspension or any other time that Morant was out. They were not a good home basketball team last year. They are much better to this point in the season. 6 of your next 7 are at home. You only have a couple of games against teams that are theoretically better than you when healthy. And one of those teams in the Nuggets isn't going to be healthy, and they may not have their best guy on the court who's better than your best guy. That impacts Denver a lot. So it gives you a chance to say, maybe we win 5 of these next 7, even without Ja. And we look for trying to get him back in the first or second week of December. And we have a record that is, if they win 5 of their next 7, that would put them at 13-8. And 13-8 probably has you in the mix for the top 6 in the Western Conference, and you're there without your best guy playing a majority of your games. That would be a massive win and a massive shift away from what they experienced last year.